Hello, everyone. So Richard is with us. Richard passed PMP exam today. Richard, thank you so much for your time. And this conversation would be really helpful for everyone, especially for Mohan. He was missing you today. So congratulations on passing PMP exam. So let's talk about your exam experience. How are you feeling, Richard?
I'm feeling relieved. It's been a very long walk, and it was a breath of fresh air when I read that sheet of paper.
Great, great. Congratulations. So let's start with your professional background and especially your project management experience.
Okay, so my name is Richard Jones. I work for Anne Arundel County Public Schools in Maryland, and I am at this stage what's known as a planner estimator. So I do a lot of project planning and estimation. Project management experience. I have been managing projects for, I'd say, solidly for about 10 years, we'll say. I own my own general contracting business for residential housing. And prior to that, I was what you would call a 6A contractor for a general contracting firm, which basically means we did general carpentry for projects, residential and commercial. So it wasn't so much managing projects. That's where I kind of got my feet wet, and then I just developed skills throughout all that. So I have a lot of experience in predictive methodologies. So agile is something very, very different. But I mean, through this process, learning those methodologies, I'm very excited to take them to where I am now, because I do see there's a lot of benefit in learning those processes and a lot of benefit in using those processes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. So what was your exam preparation strategy, Richard?
So this all started with the boot camp. I want to say back in February, and I attended your boot camp. We went through that for 4 days, and from there, you suggested reading materials. So I picked up the PMP guide, 7th edition, and and when I started going through that, I realized that I had a hard time with agile. It was just I keep repeating it myself. It's just a blank spot for me because I've never seen it performed, and a lot of the processes I just have without it being an example, I had a hard time at that point in time wrapping my mind around. So I picked up the agile practice guide and I ran through that, so that would help me give me a better understanding about the agile process and what it is, and what Kanban is, and what some of the artifacts are for agile processes and how all that's supposed to work. And in doing that, that really helped me kind of get an understanding. Attending your Q&A sessions have been massively helpful, just to be able to get in there and to be able to listen to other people and hear other experiences of people that do use agile and how that practice works, and how we have a lot of the same thinking across industries. It doesn't matter if I'm working for education, somebody's working in IT, a lot of the same practices are implemented there. So a lot of the same thinking and practices are used throughout the industry. And what's interesting about going back and taking that to the PMI standards is how we can develop the process to be better from their point of view of best practices. So it's just been doing all that, learning all that, and then once I got closer, we started doing a lot of the questions that were provided, and timing myself on mock exams. So breaking it down into 3 groups of 60 questions, and then sitting down and the first time I did a mock exam, I did the first 60 questions, and then I went in and I looked at the answers and try to check off, see where I was. And that was kind of driving me nuts, but I did it for the first mock exam. And it was driving me nuts because it was like I could see where I'm going wrong. So the second and third mock exam I did, I just went through it. I just did the mock exam as it was going to be, to make sure that I try to time myself for, I knew that this is going to be 76 minutes. So yeah, so I tried to make sure that I am doing about a minute for a question, and when I'm falling behind, then I tried to pick up the pace and tried to get through a lot of the questions. And, when you're looking at the questions, you're looking at the answers, you kind of almost develop, when you do those questions in quick repetition like that, you tend to understand a little bit better. Well, this is not going to work. This is not going to work. So I can kind of strike those answers because they're not what PMI would do. And matter of fact, they're not as a good practice for anybody at that point in time, because you can, through the process, you can see why that practice would be an incorrect practice. So all of a sudden you get that mindset that PMI is kind of looking for. And then once you kind of lock in, you kind of get into a zone, and then you're like, okay, I can go through some of these questions. A lot of that, like a lot of the mock exams, they were great help. But the PMI questions were just, they were just structured a little bit different. A lot of same framework, but they're just, it's hard to correlate. But they're just a little bit different. And then your questions on Q&A exams are also a little different. But when your quick Q&A sessions, what's good about them is the dissection of the question, of what, trying to find the terms that PMI is using and how they're going to try to figure out how to, that this is the best answer, or that this is the best answer, or you read that word incorrectly, or this is actually not a process, trying to define those things and how to go through the question and figure out what they're looking for, how they're asking the question, what the statement is saying, and how the question is phrased really is going to determine how you answer the question.
All right. Thank you for detailed explanation. So you said you read PMBOK guide, or then you attended these Q&A session and you solved mock exam. What was your average score in those mock exams?
So the best I could do was 73. Was my last one right before I went in, and I was having some really tough. I was like, man, I know this stuff, but like I said, the best I could do was just a 73, and for whatever reason, I couldn't pull myself out of the 70s. And even with this, some nights were better, some nights were worse. But what I noticed is when I went back and I graded my sheet, like I started bad, but if I persisted and moved through it and got into that zone of answering questions, I performed a lot better because the questions, like, it started making sense. So like if I knew that if I could just start with confidence and go in with a winning, a better mindset at the front start of the questions, because once I got to the second part and third part and the second, third part, it was like I would hit runs of questions where I was getting the answer correctly. So yeah, and Q&A sessions, I was getting anywhere from 6s to 8s a night. And like the best mock exam I did, it was like I said, it was after the full thing, it was like 72. I'm not exactly sure what my score is. I went to a center to get it, so I only got the printout that says you have passed, and I'm like, okay, well, in 48 hours, I'll guess I'll get a better result of how I performed within the knowledge centers,
All
knowledge
right.
areas.
All right, great. And how much total time you spent in preparation?
Oh my goodness. So in crunch time, so for the weekend in crunch time, we spent probably about, I want to say about 25 hours, because I took 2 days off of work and had a little bit of time over the weekend. So I was really kind of blasting that mock exam. So at the weekend I had a bit of a cram session of about 25 hours. Other than that, we were going for about an hour and a half a night, and we were doing that for quite a while. And the books took me about 10 hours for the Agile Practice Guide and about 15 hours for the PMBOK guide to get through. And I was constantly reviewing my notes. I'd say I had to have at least about 120 hours of preparation time between all of the study material and all the preparation for me. And like I said, it was just a lot to get over that Agile hump. But I will say that in the actual test itself, you do need to know Agile, and you have to understand what it does and how it functions. You have to know that. But there's so much process and hybrid and tailoring, where the question will ask, we're going to attack this project with a predictive approach, but there are some things that require a high degree of change. And, knowing that stuff and knowing how to recognize that stuff and identifying that stuff in the question really helps you solve questions better. And I think a lot of that within the last, 30 hours of studying, hitting those mock exams hard really kind of spelled that out. Like I needed to find these questions better. And I think I was having a hard time with
All right.
for, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Apart from Agile, what are the topics where students should focus on?
I had a lot of, conflict management questions, like, a lot of people questions, people process, emotional intelligence questions, people acting out in meetings. What would you do? Felicity asked for calculations. There was absolutely not one calculation I had to know. I would say that my drag and drops were easier than my pick two or more answers. That I was those were a little bit tougher for me. The drag and drops were tougher on the mock exams than they were on the actual exam, which was a breath of fresh air because I thought I kind of nailed a couple of those. Yeah, a lot of people, a lot of process. And I'm just be honest, like a lot of it was just kind of a blur because like when you're in there, you just kind of getting through questions. But I did notice the ones that stuck out to me were, you have to know your owner's roles, like your owner's role, sponsor's role, what they mean to agile process, what they mean to the predictive process, and a lot of hybrid questions and a lot of scenario-based questions where you're leading either a medical thing or you're leading another one would be, geographically dispensed and, setting up virtual communications was a big thing on my exam, how to communicate, being
Yeah.
geographically dispersed and stuff like that.
All right. Thank you. Okay, there is one question in the chat window. Were you repeating the same mock exam or you were taking new sets of questions every time?
New sets of questions.
New sets of questions. Right. Okay. Yes, you can repeat mock exam questions, but then the score that you would be getting, that is not the true reflection of your understanding because most of the question you remember when you solve second time. So you can do that for understanding purposes, but not for the evaluation purposes. All right, everybody, you can ask Richard whatever you want to ask regarding exam preparation.
I guess, Richard, question for you. I mean, I just took a mock, and I didn't do timing wise. I didn't do very well, right? So I was kind of struggling with the time. Obviously, it's 1 minute per question, trying to track that, but then I was basically falling behind everything, right? I guess from your experience while preparing, right? When you were taking these mocks, do you have kind of similar trajectory when you were taking the first one? And what was your experience? And then obviously, I'm assuming that once you took like a couple of those mocks, at least 3 or 4, your time management got better.
So for my first mock, I tried to stay within the time limit, the time constraints. And I was very conscientious of the clock. I had my monitors set up and one had the exam, the other one had the timer. And my timer counted down from 1 hour and 16 minutes. So that I knew that when I had to speed up, I had to speed up. So there will be almost kind of like gimme questions that I saw that were in the mock exams and they were kind of in the real exam where you kind of pick up time. They're not easy, but the other answers are just like they'd have nothing to do with the question. And as long as you dissect the question correctly, you'll figure out what they're looking for, and that's where you're able to make up time. The issue that I had was the fact that when we go through all these questions, we know that these hard questions are coming. And you almost get into this mindset where you think every question is going to ask more than what's asking. You have to be able to sit there, look at the question, figure out what the situation is, what the question is asking, and finding the best solution and doing that as quickly as possible. I noticed, like, when I was doing the mock exams, I kept getting procedure mixed up with procurement, and that was screwing me up. And that was one of those things where I have to make sure that I read the question correctly, because the answer I was thinking it was saying one thing and it's not. So the time does screw with you, but you have to make sure that you have to develop this system, and forcing yourself into that time gets you into a spot where you're quickly trying to identify what you're looking for in your answers that will answer the question that they're asking for, as far as what PMI considers their best practice. And it becomes very apparent once you get into that rhythm and you get into that zone where it's like you can kind of go through there, and as soon as something that says we're gonna fire somebody, it's almost like, well, we know we're not doing that 99% of the time, unless that's the best answer available, because the other three answers are so ridiculous. We can almost know that, this question, PMI wants us to empower your team. So we understand that that's a PMI thing that wants to have happen. They understand that, face-to-face meetings are important. If there's an issue, a face-to-face meeting is important, or to resolve conflict, doing face-to-face meetings, or that the PMI understands that, and they'll use that, and then you'll get down to like two answers that could probably solve the question, and then you have to really kind of dissect, well, which one is the better answer, which is the best answer that is available of the answers, and that's kind of how I attack the questions. After a while, once you kind of develop a cadence, and once you recognize, well, this answer does not require a lot of thought, this answer does not require a lot of thought, there'll be a couple of questions where you get through them in almost like 15 to 30 seconds, and that's where you're gaining time. And then you can fall back on the bigger questions when you're reading the stuff, and understand that the details in there, it's saying a lot, but you got to get to the information, because it seems like the process, the PMI is supposed to help you develop a project management like I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but basically you should be able to take the knowledge you have and be able to apply it to different things that you don't have any idea of, just by knowing the processes in the background. So when it doesn't necessarily matter that it is a medical field, what is the problem? What are they looking for? How do you answer it? And I think that's kind of, you can kind of disseminate a lot of that stuff by nailing down what's the process, what is the knowledge area, what are we looking for? Is there an artifact? And breaking it down to the simplest terms. And that's kind of what I looked at to try to gain speed when it came to answering questions.
All right. Kokila, you want to ask question?
Yeah, congratulations, Richard. I'm very happy for you.
Thank
I
you.
know you worked hard and you got the results. So congratulations. So my question is, how many mock tests did you take? So average, how many mock tests do you suggest to take?
So I took 3, and I wouldn't necessarily say that I would suggest that. The more questions you answered, the better prepared you are going to be. So whether it's just doing the mock exam is great because it mixes a lot of the process questions. If you can find, like, I know that Amar does these structured 10 questions about, the structured 10 questions about a process area. If you can find questions or lists like that can help you answer questions, that way you can kind of get into the framework of, if there's let's say we're doing stakeholder engagement, if you can get more than that amount of questions, it's not a mock exam, but it helps you get into that rhythm where you can just break down 60 of those questions, and that helps you practice and get into a rhythm of how to answer questions. So it's not necessarily a mock exam, but you could time yourself to the hour and 16 minutes and help nail down a knowledge area. And then, like, I did 3 and I wanted to do 4. I wanted to get 4 of them done, but I just kind of ran out of time. And by last night, I'm like, look, this is where I'm at. This is where I'm going to be. Tomorrow's test day, and that clock is going to go from 2:30 to 0. So the knowledge is in there. I know it's in there. I can perform. I understand what they're looking for. I might not have everything that they're looking for, but I know that what I've done to prepare has helped me prepare and has brought me to a point to where I can focus and I can nail this. And that's kind of what I went in with that mindset, is because I've done the preparation. I performed okay at the mock exam level, but ultimately I was talking to somebody at work, and it's like, you kind of have to get to the point where you got to rip the Band-Aid off. Just because I think one of the blockers for me was I was scared because I wasn't performing well on Q&A sessions. And that was a mental hang up. I'm not fully understanding, like, Amar knows this stuff so well. And he knows that he's asking you the toughest questions. So it prepares your mind to be able to figure out the information you want and be able to talk about that, because the PMI is going to ask you questions that are going to have the correct answer, or an answer that your organization uses that is incorrect. So, when you sit here and you get these discussions and we take all this conversation, we kind of get to the point where this is the question that they're going to ask you, how do we dissect it, and what's the best answer moving forward, or what's PMI looking for? That's what's good about, these sessions in general. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, once you feel that you have the knowledge there, I know Amar said it, and it's kind of really been sticking to the mind. He said, just go for it. If you're scoring 6-7 on these Q&A sessions, just go for it. Schedule your exam. Put that goal in front of you, and go for that goal. And that just kind of spoke to me. So I kind of went through the process, and I had a little bit of motivation, because there are positions in my office that are asking for this PMP certification. And, I've set the date. So that was my goal. My motivation was the ability to achieve in my organization. So I took those two factors, and I just kind of put my head down, and I trusted the process. And I did those mock exams, and I built up my cadence so I could answer the questions on time. And I just kind of went for it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And one more quick question. So,
Yes, ma'am.
do we need to prepare the material and then try the mock exam, or mix, like, even if you're not thorough with the material, just go ahead and try the mock exam?
I would say get through your material. It helps. It helps a lot more than it hurts. If you feel, if you're here at Q&A sessions and you're getting 6, 7, 8 questions right consistently, then go for the mock exam and see how you do on the mock exam, and see how you perform there. But just knowing, if you know the material, it only helps, because you are able to identify things. So one of the things that were hanging me up was, I would get in, and Amar went through on our group, and he says, these are the stages that you go through. And you start here, and you go, project charter, then project management plan, and then you go through all these steps. I was so locked in on how our organization does it that I was getting hung up that there's a process that PMI wants you to go through, and there's almost a timetable for predictive. So they would say, well, this part isn't even supposed to happen, because risk management doesn't come before project management. So why are you going to have a risk register? And I'm like, I could have just as easily crossed that answer off, because it had nothing to do with where I was, because right now I'm after project charter, getting ready to do project management plan. So knowing that information and knowing the sequence of events and how, or your agile ceremonies line up, all that stuff helps.
Got it.
It
Thank you.
helps disqualify bad answers quicker.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. So,
Richard?
Oh, hey,
yeah,
Alan.
go ahead, Alan.
Sorry. So first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
I have two quick questions. The first one is, being honest, I'm so bad in the mock exams. I have sometimes I have 3, sometimes I have 1, sometimes I have 7. but the most of the a lot of times I got bad responses. So my first question is, I study the Rita's book and the PMI guide, but I don't keep the information. Being honest, I feel like my strategy is not the good one, and how do you feel? How do you prepare your study method to say, okay, first I need to study in this way, and then for this, because I don't feel like comfortable with my methods and also with my results.
I completely sympathize with you because I was in the same exact position, Alan. There would be nights where I would show up and I swear I could not answer a question right. And I had to understand that Amar was really trying to show us how difficult the questions can be, because there are questions that are just as tough in the exam, but not all of them. And I think that's kind of what you kind of have to get through, because not all the questions are going to be like that. But Amar's questions really challenge your knowledge of the process. And, that's what I think is really challenging about these Q&A sessions, and what I'm really going to miss is because it does give you an opportunity to learn. However, these 10 questions are not the mock exam. I would say for you is to try a mock exam. Just try to get a mock exam and see how you perform. As far as study goes, I was getting to the point where I thought that I could not cram another piece of information in my head. Because I could not, because it's just so much information. What the mock exam does is give you a barrage of questions that show you how things work and how things are supposed to get put together and what PMI, and it challenges that stuff. So it actually kind of unlocks something in your mind to show you how this stuff works. And that's what I think was happening in those mock exams, is like, it gave you, there's like I said, a lot of them are scenario based. So you look at a scenario and you figure out how the stuff that you've been studying works in this scenario. And it takes you through all of these different scenarios and different scenarios. So that's why I said to a scenario. And when you start doing that in repetition, then you get to the mock exam. Okay, first one, like I scored 65. It wasn't that great. But it opened my eyes to see how things fit. It was almost like you just saw the solution to the puzzle. And it's not a puzzle, but you just kind of looked at it and you saw like, okay, so this test is going to challenge my knowledge of how this stuff goes together. And so then I tried another one, completely different questions. I didn't do the same questions again. I just tried another one. And you scored better. The beginning was rough, but once you got into the groove, everything went better. Everything just kind of clicked. Third one, much better. I felt confident enough to get in there and be like, okay, I'm going to meet my date. No matter what happens today, it's going to happen. But I felt confident enough that the knowledge and my preparation was able to get me through the exam. Even with some of the blind spots that I did not know, I knew that my knowledge of the stuff that I did know was strong enough to be able to get through those questions. Amar, I didn't want to speak for Amar because I didn't know what his process was. I told him I was interested, and I wondered if he could point me to a resource. And he was like, if you're ready, try some of these. And
Okay.
they were, like I said, there's a lot of questions, and they were excellent questions to try to sharpen your mind to see how this stuff really fits together, and to do it in a regiment, and to do it quickly, and to just plow through them and see how you do at the end.
Okay.
How
My
you
second
felt?
question is,
Sorry, go
my,
ahead,
my
go
second
ahead.
question is, can you perform my exam?
Can I do what? Prefer
Can
it.
you perform my exam? Do my exam?
Well, I went to a center and they checked my license every time I walked in and out of that room. So I got my 10 minutes, and then they're like, empty your pockets, take off your glasses, show me your ID. So I don't think that's going to work. And I'm not sure if I want to do it again, but
So Alan
Okay.
wants all of us to be banned by PMI. For life. All right.
Thank you so much. Your answer helped me a lot.
All right.
Richard, this
Good luck,
Srinivas here.
All right, what's up,
Can
Sri?
you all hear me?
Yeah, go
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure. Okay. I think you're seeing me for the first time. I'm coming online for the first time now, and I always hear to you and Amar with his great presentations and explanations. So, yeah, my question is, as I put in the chat, did you get straightforward questions? Anything related to the documents that or the ITTOs, or were they all situational based, or what type of questions were they?
I would say if you're talking about straightforward questions, there were a few, not a lot, but there were a few. My exam had a few. But there are more where the answers were more straightforward to the question. The question would say something, but the answers, because of the preparation, you were able to rule out answers quicker. So some of the answers would pop off the page or pop off the question faster than an actual like you know what? I don't think I had. I think I might have had one question about SPI in the whole 180 questions. I thought that the most straightforward questions that I had were the match. Yeah, four scenarios and four options. Those
Definition
for me were
related to the definition and answers. Is it?
yeah.
Or board
Those
with
were the most
definition, sorry.
straightforward for me because I was burning through those questions. I don't know, but I didn't know what to expect until Omar started putting them in the Q&A sessions. And once I approached some of those, I was like, yes, I know how to handle these questions, and that was entirely beneficial. But for those were the most straightforward questions for me. Everything else just kind of there's a lot of scenario based because, like I said, PMI wants to test your knowledge of the process. So what they're going to do is they want you to know that what you've learned works just about anywhere, whatever project. Whatever hybrid project, whatever agile project, whatever predictive project, this stuff works. What they're teaching you is going to work. And they'll give you a scenario where they want you to do that. So a lot of the scenario-based stuff, I think, more than anything, is there's a lot of scenario-based stuff. And the mock exams do provide those. But to answer your question directly, yes, there are a few. Not a lot, there are a few.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you for coming online and helping us with your experience. It is actually giving me some encouragement to actually schedule my test now. So thank you.
Yeah, schedule it, set a goal. And that's the thing. It's just like, that's the one thing that I mentioned to Amar about this group is just, it is encouraging. Amar puts all this work together to get us all, and it's from different, we're all from different industries, and we're all trying to achieve the same goal. So when we're in here and we're trying to talk about how our organizations attack this and how we would attack this, that does help. And so just being in this group and celebrating each other's successes, that's a big encouragement to this group being formed together. So it's been good to see. Chimneys did that. Once Chimneys passed, I'm just like, all right, Chimneys got it, and then Sri Harsha got it, and I'm just like, all right, man, more and more people are getting this PMP certification. I better step up my game because it is achievable, and it is achievable for everybody. Like, I swing a hammer for a living. That's what I tell everybody. When people ask me what I do, I'm like, I swing a hammer for a living. It's roughly, it's a rough explanation of what I do, but I mean, that's where I came from. It's where I started from. So, coming from that, being able to adapt to predictive methodologies and to be able to pick up and see how the things can relate. And because like I fully intend on bringing some hybrid methodology into my place of business because I could just see the benefit of agile and I like it. And that this PMP certification is really going to help me be able to put that forward in my place of business. So it's been an exciting process. It's been a great learning process. I'm thankful for everything that has happened, and definitely stick to it. Definitely push forward. Schedule your exam. Set that goal in front of you. Put that carrot out in front of you, and that way you have something to achieve towards. Sometimes you just kind of need to set that date, and then you understand that you got a deadline, and you need to kind of work towards that.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. One more quick question, sir. Amar, even
Okay.
probably you could answer. So I've heard you as well as I'm not sure who was the other person earlier. They both set up a time. I mean, at the center. They went to the center and had this exam. So anyone any specific reason for this, or is it that just for your convenience that was close enough? And
So my convenience would have been having at home. The issue is like my home has distractions. So I wanted to be completely focused in an environment where I could just kind of, and this is kind of something that I did when I was doing my mock exams, because I do my mock exams here. But I just kind of put on some headphones, completely canceled out all the sound, and completely focused on what the task was at hand. And I know that when I was in the environment of the center, that was going to provide for me, because they do a really good job of just kind of isolating you to a booth, maintaining the environment around you to make sure that it's free from distractions. They provided me with a pair of headphones. I couldn't walk in there with anything because, you know, everything's very well regulated, but it was just an environment for me to just sit there, focus on what I had to accomplish, and just, you know, achieve.
yeah, you're fine getting it a date nearby, or for the next 1 month I'm finding it difficult. So I'm just trying to see what is best.
Good luck.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah.
So I think Richard has covered everything. So yes, just schedule your exam and have a target in your mind and just do it as Richard mentioned. Follow the simple process. Take the course, read good content, solve mock exam. And if you're getting 70% of marks in the mock exam, whether these Q&A session or any of good quality mock exams, just go for the exam. Last thing, you need the right mindset that Richard mentioned. If you understand PMI mindset, then things would be much easier. So some of you answers incorrectly, even the simple question. Why? Because you're not capturing that mindset. So every question is a mindset. So try to understand that, try to learn the PMIism, and I think that's all PMI is. If you understand PMIism, this exam is not difficult. So like Richard, everybody, if you just follow the process, you would be able to pass the exam. Richard, thank you so much for your time and detailed explanation. You explained everything in detail, and I think this would be really helpful for anyone who is here or who would be watching later. And please follow Richard, schedule your exam, pass it so that we can record your lessons learned as well. Thank you so much, Richard. Congratulations. Enjoy your success. We will be in touch, and take care, everybody. Good night.
Thank you very much, Amar.
You're welcome.
Congratulations. Bye.
Good luck, everybody.
Congratulations again, Richard. Bye.